Good afternoon. Welcome to the People of Color and Indigenous Peoples Caucus. We're very grateful for their partnership to be able to process and send a message of unity together. My name is Emilia Gonzalez-Avalos. I am the Executive Director of Navigate Minnesota. We are a grassroots nonprofit organization that builds power for immigration and education justice. First off, we'll start by some community members and organizers that have worked very hard before to win DACA, and now, for what's next. So first, we'll start with Juventino Mesa, who is a member of our organization, and President Priveno from Augsburg College.
Hi, everybody. My name is Juventino Mesa, and I currently work with Navigate. I'm a graduate of Augsburg University, and the words that I want to share are really for our youth. These are really hard times. We've fought really, really hard for DACA, and we want to make sure that you don't feel alone and for you to reach out. We also want to make sure that we want people to stop blaming our parents and to acknowledge that we're families. And if you really care about the integrity of a family, you should be caring about our families. I also want to make sure that as we think about what comes next, of course, we want Congress to pass a bill that recognizes the complexity of the issue, but that also creates a permanent solution, not only for DACA holders, but for 11 million undocumented immigrants. We also want youth to understand that they're not alone and that we're trying our hardest to work with everybody that we can, because solutions cannot only be done by the government. There are a lot of other entities that can be and can do a lot of work. And one of those places is Augsburg College, or Augsburg University, where I attended as a student.
Thank you, Juve. Yes, Juve Mesa, one of these remarkable students that came to us. When did you graduate? 2008? 2011. Made a huge difference on campus, and as you can see, is making a huge difference in our community and in our country, and we're so proud of him. I'm pleased to represent certainly Augsburg, but also the colleges and universities that are across this state that care deeply about this issue, and I'm particularly pleased that we have representatives from the University of Minnesota here. A wave if you're back here. I'm sorry, way in the back. So, and I think we also have folks here from Minnesota State. Thank you very much for being here. And I really assign, I think, that the entire higher education community here in Minnesota is deeply dedicated to this work. The past 15 years, we at Augsburg and colleges and universities across this state have had the privilege to meet the so-called dreamers, remarkable young people who grow up in this country because their parents moved here to seek a better life. Our undocumented and DACA students have astounded us with their intellect, their work ethic, their perseverance, and their service to our communities. Since 2012, our DACA students have been able to enhance their education through work and study abroad opportunities that were not available to them before that program. What this has done, this has allowed them to truly enjoy the wonders and the richness of the educational experience that we hope for all of our students. A decision now, there we go. A decision now, as has been made to curtail DACA, robs these innocent young people of their opportunity for education, a promise we have made to them, and a promise that we intend to keep to them, those who are on our campuses now. And the truth is, it would also rob our country of a generation of immigrant children who, like previous generations of immigrants before them, the ones who came to our communities and founded institutions like Augsburg, that promise would also be lost, the promise to make our country ever more stronger and more vibrant. So we stand, all of us stand with our students. They're on our campus right now. They started today at Augsburg University, and we know they're there, and we offer all the resources we can in the short term to keep them safe, to help them be successful, but also our fierce voice of advocacy for DACA so that these students can truly make this country truly great. So it's a pleasure to be here and to support our graduates, but also these remarkable people who care about this issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Juven, President Privano. It's very important to, again, send a message to young people. A lot of our students that are starting their first day today in K through 12 and higher education, you're not alone. We see you, we love you, and a lot of the people that are in this room will keep fighting for us all. Next, we'll have Catalina Morales. She's a community organizer with ISEA.
Hello. My name is Catalina Morales. I am one of the lead organizers with ISEA, which is a faith-based organization. I've been working with ISEA for about 3 years now, fighting for our immigrant community. And the only reason that I was able to do that was because of DACA. When I received DACA, I was able to get a driver's license, start living where I could provide a good life for my family, for my parents. My sisters and I have been responsible for maintaining my mother, who has been here over 2 decades and has given all her life to this country in her work and has not received anything back. And right now in this decision, if DACA is rescinded and is taken back by March 5th and Congress doesn't do anything about it, it will affect my life and the life of my family. And it will affect everyone around me because most of the communities that I live with and I know, they have mixed status families. So someone in the household is providing, paying, putting their name under their bills so that their parents can survive and their family can survive. So this is a decision that is going to affect not only DACA recipients, but their whole families and whole communities. And this will affect also our communities and our economy, because I'm pretty sure that almost everyone knows a DACA recipient, whether they are aware of it or not. But I do want to say that I am not afraid of what's happening. I think it is time that this happened. I am blessed that DACA happened, and I'm blessed that it gave me a voice, but it is also not good enough for our communities. Right. It is not what our communities need. It is not what our communities want. Our communities want reform. I want my parents to have documents the way I have been able to succeed in my life. And that is actually the bigger fight. So what I believe is happening in this decision, it is giving us the awareness that we need to fight even harder. And if there is anyone that has put that example, it has been the Dreamers. And we have seen that. They have laid an example for us and for our community to fight. And that is exactly what we are going to do. So as a person of faith that organizes in a faith-based environment, I believe that this is a message. I believe that God is standing with us. And I also believe that we need to see our communities as a whole and not only see that this is only, Dreamers or students or things like that, but this is our whole communities. And this is not only a Latino issue. We have many immigrants that are not Latino that have DACA, and their families are being affected by this. And the sooner we recognize that this is happening in this country, the sooner we're going to have more people do things about it. And I invite all of you to join us because we're starting this today. So at 4, we're going to be on 2200 East Franklin. We're going to start with a rally, and then we're going to lead a march to downtown Minneapolis, to the immigration building there. And I hope to see many of you there. I hope to see the press there. And I hope that our public officials say something, put out a statement in any level, city council, mayors, legislative, we see this right now. And also our Congress people, our fight is going your way. So I hope you put out a statement now. If not, you will see us at your office. Thank you.
Thank you, Catalina. We also want to recognize our friends and other friend organizations that are in the room. We have here John Keller from ILCM. We have folks from Jewish Community Action. We have folks from ISEA, as we mentioned. We have CLUS, our Commissioner Lindsay from the Commission of Human Rights of the State of Minnesota, and there are so many, if I didn't shout your name. President of the College Council, and anybody else? Okay. Keith Ellison's office and Senator Klobuchar and Senator Franken's office are here in the room. We're going to move forward. We're going to hear some remarks from Senator Melissa Franzen, Senator Mariani, a representative from the office of Amy Klobuchar, Senator Amy Klobuchar, and a representative from the office of Senator Al Franken as well. and Henry Jimenez from MCLA.
Thank you, everybody, for being here this afternoon, and welcome. This is our joint statement from legislators, people of color, and the Indigenous Caucus, leaders of faith, immigrant allies, and caring Minnesotans gather in solidarity here today with DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals recipients who entered the United States as minors under the age of 16. My name is Melissa Franzen, Senator Franzen from District 49. I'm here gathered with my colleagues, and the executive orders, as you all know, are powerful tools, and throughout our nation's history, presidents have used these powers for the betterment of our country. An executive order put Americans back to work during the Great Depression. Our military was desegregated by executive order, and it was an executive order that protected students when our schools were desegregated. One of our country's greatest service programs, the Peace Corps, was also established by executive order more than half a century ago. Not since President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the executive order that led to the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II has a president issued an executive order that threatened so much harm, injury, and disruption to our communities. To put the president's action to revoke DACA into historic perspective, Japanese internment affected nearly 120,000 people. Ending DACA today will affect nearly 800,000 young people, more than 6,300 who reside and work in our state of Minnesota. The young people who are recipients of DACA are honest, hardworking members of our community. As is required to receive DACA, they are law-abiding. They have passed strict scrutiny, security, and background checks. DACA recipients embody all the best qualities that we hope for and expect from our young people in our state. But DACA recipients are much more than that. They are people we know and people we love. For many of us, DACA recipients are brothers and sisters, and nephews and nieces, neighbors. They are co-workers and friends. Many are parents to U.S. citizen children. They are neighbors and members of our faith communities. DACA recipients have been employed right here in the state capitol. DACA recipients are medical students, they're law students, they're high school students, college students, and workers in countless industries and vocations. Let's consider what ending DACA will mean not only to DACA recipients, but also to our state and to our nation. Ending DACA will do nothing to make our country more secure. Ending DACA will not bring order to our broken immigration system. Ending DACA will not reduce crime or strengthen the public safety. Ending DACA will not strengthen our community, our economic, nor make our civic life stronger. So we asked ourselves today, what purpose is served by revoking DACA from 800,000 young people? What purpose is served by bringing chaos to the lives of thousands of young people who had faithfully complied with the requirements that our federal and state governments placed on them for the last 5 years? We have a responsibility to defend DACA. These bright young people earned a place in our community. When called on, they stood up and to be counted. Now they need us to stand with them. We must demonstrate that we have the integrity to honor our end of the bargain. Across Minnesota, we call on bipartisan state leaders to continue integrating DACA recipients into our civic life, our workforce, and the pathways to opportunities. It is our charge to uphold constitutional protections and due process so DACA recipients are not singled out unfairly. We can build a stronger Minnesota with our DACA community. We also have a responsibility to hold Congress and the President accountable for an immigration system that is failing economic, cultural, and humanitarian needs of our country. There is no Democrat or Republican that believes our system, a current immigration system, is serving our country. And revoking DACA is not the solution. This is a statement from the People of Color Indigenous Caucus, newly formed in 2017, which includes Representatives Mary Kunesh-Poden, Jamie Becker-Finn, Peggy Flanagan, Aaron McQuaid, Few Lee, Ilhan Omar, Susan Allen, Rena Moran, Carlos Mariani, Senators Bobby Joe Champion, Jeff Hayden, Patricia Torres-Ray, Fung He, and myself, Melissa Franzen. And in the audience, we have also Representatives Ray Dean behind us, Representative Aaron Murphy, Representative Clark Johnson, Representative Frank Hornstein, and Senator Scott Dibble. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Carlos Mariani, State Representative from St. Paul. I'll be very brief. This is a sad day for Minnesota. This is a sad day for our nation. This is a sad day for my colleagues and the people of color, Indigenous Legislators Caucus. We know that the lives of over 6,300 Minnesotans, some of our youngest or some of our brightest young people in our state, is now at great peril. They join that with 800,000, close to 800,000 other Americans. You heard that correct, I called them Americans. These are people who share our values, our hopes, our aspirations, who we've grown up together, who we've nurtured, who we've taken care of, and who have taken care of us. They are Americans. One thing a lot of folks don't know is that every year about 67,000 undocumented young people graduate from U.S. public schools every year. There are 4 million students enrolled in our public schools across the nation who have at least one parent who's an undocumented resident of the United States. So this is not a small issue, even though its smallness is very important to each and every one of these souls and human beings. This is a massive issue that has laid dormant and festering in our nation. And the President's actions today take us in the wrong direction of addressing that issue. As a legislator, and I've been at this for many years, it was my motivation and continues to be my motivation to do this work because I believe that the people's government is a tool to be able to help people live a decent and good life. The unprecedented actions that were taken today by the White House run counter to that simple notion of using our government as a way to be present and creating goodness in our society. These legislators before you have been walking with these DACA recipients for years. We took action to provide opportunity for college with the DREAM Act. We went further than other states, not only providing equal access, but providing financial aid because we believe in investing in good things. We worked to stabilize opportunities for their undocumented families, to do things like have access to a driver's license. We weren't successful in that, but that's been a persistent, constant walking that these legislators have done with these families. Our governor has taken great strides to provide access to health care for these very same families and, of course, for the DACA students. We've supported local cities, counties, sheriffs, as they've striven to create stable, safe places that are where fairness and justice and due process is followed so that we don't wind up with a Joe Arpaio state. We have worked with the private sector throughout all of this, with various sectors in our society, with our chambers of commerce, with a number of agricultural sectors who understand every day how vital these DACA recipients, the broader undocumented community, the even broader immigrant community are to the well-being of their sector and to the well-being of our state. We're talking billions of dollars of economic activity of which these communities are at the heart of helping to drive successfully. We do all this because of a simple notion. We believe our job is to work to make a strong Minnesota. It's really pretty simple. And in order to do that, we need to continue to walk with these DACA recipients, with our immigrants, with our undocumented immigrants. We will explore as legislators whatever we can do using the law to be able to continue to hold the line for opportunities for these communities. And we will do everything we can to work with, yes, to work with this White House and with Congress so that we have true immigration reform that makes America great. Thank you.
Just a short statement from Senator Klobuchar. I strongly disagree with President Trump's decision today, as do many Republicans, Democrats, business, labor, and religious leaders. Dreamers came to our country as children, and this is their home, the United States of America. Dreamers serve in our military, pay taxes, and contribute to communities across the country. They are in school and the workforce. Ending DACA would create tremendous uncertainty for families and risk deportation for Dreamers across the country. I stand ready to work with leaders on both sides of the aisle to pass the Durbin-Graham bill to preserve DACA for young Dreamers across our nation. Thank you for coming out today to show your support for Dreamers. Despite what the White House did today, we must all have their backs.
Thank you. My name is Dan Solomon from Senator Al Franken's office, and I'll read a short statement from Senator Franken. The men and women protected under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, commonly known as DACA, are American in every single way except immigration status. Often called Dreamers, these are students, innovators, and entrepreneurs who were brought here as children and grew up in the United States. They're our friends, coworkers, and neighbors, and they make enormous contributions to the economies of Minnesota and the entire country. The decision by President Trump to end DACA is a disgrace to our moral values and principles. It's not who we are or should be as a nation. Let me be clear. I promise that I will fight to protect the Dreamers who live in Minnesota and across the country. Senator Al Franken.
Hello, everyone. My name is Henry Jimenez. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Council on Latino Affairs, which is a state agency that advises and informs the Governor's Office and state legislature on matters of importance to the Latino community, which is everything. I also want to let everybody know that our 4 staffs are either immigrants or children of immigrants. The news that we received today, obviously, we all know is devastating. But want to make sure that everybody knows that this is not devastating to only 6,300 people. It's devastating to all Minnesotans. Over 6,300 Minnesotans have received DACA. These hardworking, contributing members of our communities are Minnesotans. I just want to repeat that. These 6,300 individuals are Minnesotans. They are our family members, neighbors, fellow classmates, and teachers. Many are utilizing their Minnesota earned degrees to keep Minnesota prosperous. MCLA wants all Dreamers and Minnesotans to know that we will continue to work hard and do our best to support and represent the interests of Minnesotans, which is the interest of Latino community that includes all immigrant communities. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mitra. I'm here on behalf of Congressman Keith Ellison, and I also want to first thank organizers and allies who created this opportunity in a moment of intense pain and anguish. I appreciate your leadership. This is a statement from Congressman Ellison. President Trump abandoned the Dreamers today, but Congress must not. I urge Congress to immediately support a long-term solution for participants of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, program. I also call on the Trump administration to forego all enforcement action against Dreamers. President Trump's decision to terminate the DACA program is a devastating betrayal of the hundreds of thousands of youth who placed their trust in our government. For the past 5 years, DACA has provided a pathway to hope and prosperity for nearly 800,000 young people across our nation, including almost 6,300 youth in Minnesota. DACA recipients make up the very fabric of our communities as parents, students, veterans, law clerks, teachers, and more, and have lived almost their entire lives as Americans. The president's decision will damage their futures and tear families apart. It is cruel and un-American. Nearly 80% of the general public supports permanent legal status for Dreamers. Despite overwhelming bipartisan support for DACA youth, the president is catering to people who are extremist and prejudiced. President Trump cannot separate his decision to coddle the neo-Nazis and the KKK in Charlottesville from his cruel decision to slam the door in the face of Dreamers. It's what he means when he says, "Make America great again." Taken as a whole, his presidency represents a step backwards to the bad old days before liberty and justice for all was a commonly accepted idea. To our neighbors who are a part of DACA, no matter what extremists say, you're a part of our American family. If you're here, you deserve to live your life without fear and prejudice. Every American has a moral imperative to fight back against extremism, xenophobia, and racism, and we must stand strong with all immigrant families through DACA and beyond, and keep fighting for an immigration system that is fair and inclusive to all. Thank you.
Question? Any questions? Do we have perhaps John Keller share some words if there's no questions? Okay, you have a question?
Besides the 4 o'clock gathering, what are some of the things that you would want us to be doing?
Besides the 4 o'clock march?
Gathering at March. What are some of the other things that you'd like the Minnesota community and those listening to this program?
That's a great question. Thank you. We're encouraging all Minnesotans to call their representatives in Congress and ask them to support a sustainable, long-term solution for young people, but also to look at the broader solution for immigration in this country. We encourage people who are neighbors, family members, members in the community to be courageous and to reach out, to tend a hand if they see someone is struggling through the day. Be a good neighbor. We know how to be good neighbors in Minnesota, and that's just a mere principle. Just be a good neighbor. And also get involved. This is the right time to get involved for many things, not just in immigration, but in many other issues. Our destinies and our future is deeply connected. So we invite you to step up and get involved in the issues that you care the most, and we hope that immigration is one of them.
Just want to add very quickly, as I stated earlier, there are a number of legislators here, all of us here, who have spent a number of years trying to realize through state legislation a way to provide opportunity, stability, fairness, and justice for these communities. We're going to redouble our efforts to do that. It's very difficult nowadays to do that in a bipartisan manner, but we recommit ourselves to do that as well, because that's what it's going to take, at least on the legislative front, to be able for Minnesota to move forward. So I listed some examples of things. I think a lot of that is going to really be about ways in which we can work within the federal framework to be able to provide opportunities and fairness for our people. I would remind us all that the state of Minnesota is a legal entity that provides resources to her people. We did that through DREAM Act, regardless of borrowing from federal ability to have financial aid. We provide financial aid with state resources. So that, I think, provides a model for the kind of things that we can continue to explore in ways in which Minnesota taxpayers, Minnesota citizens, and its legislature can continue to bolster the lives of DACA recipients as well as the broader immigrant communities.
I have a question for Ms. Morales, if you don't mind. You know what the president's arguments are on this?
Of course.
That people who are here under questionable circumstances are taking job opportunities from those who are here legally without question. How do you respond to that? And also, if this order then goes into effect ultimately, you talked about the effect on families in the community, but talk about your own personal experience or people you know directly on that too, please.
Well, what Trump says is a lie. And I mean, the man lies all the time. There is many things that have been said about immigrants taking jobs. The reality is this country won't know what it's going to do if it were to deport all of us, because we are doing jobs that no one else is doing. And if we're really realistic, Minnesota will look at having that problem within 10 years or maybe less, where there will be jobs in rural Minnesota that are not going to be filled if the undocumented community is not there. So I think what I would say to that is that, at least in Minnesota's perspective, we need to get to know our neighbors. And we need to get to know who's working in the companies that are maintaining our school systems and our communities. For me in particular, the reality is that when you don't have any documents, you can't, buy a home. You can't lease a place under your name. You can't put bills under your name. You can't buy a car and put the insurance on your name. Those are realities that I have lived in my life, most of my life. I have been undocumented in this country for more than 20 years. So I've done it before, and we can do it again. What I do think, is it going to be difficult? Of course it's going to be difficult. These moments are very difficult for us and our families. What I do want to say, though, is that this is a tactic to put fear into us. And I don't want our community to go into that. Because the reality is they're attacking right now the community members that are the strongest. That's what they're doing. And if we let them, they're going to do whatever they want to do, whether we let them or not. But the question is, are we going to stand up and fight against this? And I think right now is the moment where not only undocumented people need to stand up as a community, but all communities need to stand up together. Because this is just an example of racism in this country. But there's many more examples.
Could I just jump in, if I may? Good afternoon, Ruby Lee. I'm Executive Director of CLUS, Comunidades Latinas Unidas en Servicio. We are the largest Latino nonprofit in the state of Minnesota. We do work specifically on workforce training. We do have many programs that provide skill building, education, and so forth. What I would say to your question, sir, is in my encouragement to all Minnesotans and to people across the country is to educate ourselves about the facts. The facts are that the country as a whole is having a shortage of people to be the workforce of tomorrow. Minnesota alone in the next 3 years, by 2020, which is only 2 years away, by 2020, the state of Minnesota needs to fill 145,000 positions. We don't have the population growth that is level with the demand for workers that we have. So to me, it's not only a sad day today, but it's absurd that we are not leveraging the investment that the school system, the legislators that are behind us here, the investment that we have put in these young people who are prepared to be the workforce, who today are the workforce. As an employer, our organization has over 100 employees. I am always challenged by finding people with the bicultural, bilingual skills that we need to have in our system. I have workers who are supported by DACA. As Senator Franson said, we had many students or participants of DACA who served here right in the legislature. So it is sad, and it's also a missed opportunity if we're not leveraging this educated people who have come through our system, through our colleges, and that's why we are united today to show the facts, to tell the facts. So I encourage all of us to educate ourselves so that we can advocate and stand up for the right thing to do. Any more questions?
I'll be brief. John Keller from the Immigrant Law Center, Minnesota. We've circulated a press release. A couple things that are important to mention that I think add to the voices that are here. There's a statement from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in support of permanent legal status for these members, echoed by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. It's been my pleasure to work with a broad coalition called the Minnesota Business Immigration Coalition, MNBIC, MNBIC.org. On these issues for the last 12 years. This is not only the right thing to do, but it is in our economic self-interest to do this. Let me give you some data as to why that's the case. In Minnesota, DACA has been life-changing, and the data, both here and nationwide, shows the following. 42% of DACA recipients say that their wages have increased. Wages have increased by 42% by people who have DACA. 95% of people who have DACA are either enrolled in school or in the workforce. 90% have either a state ID or a driver's license. 54% have purchased their own first car, and an amazing 70% of those cars are brand new. 12% purchased their first home. And 63% of DACA recipients say that because of DACA, they were able to move to a better job. They are in all parts of our economic economy. They are 21% in education and health services, 11% in nonprofits, 9% in wholesale and retail, 8% in professional and business, and 6% have started their own businesses. The rate of entrepreneurship by all immigrant communities far outstrips native-born entrepreneurship. We join with everybody who's here today to call for a permanent solution, not only for Dreamers, but first and foremost for Dreamers, as well as for the parents who courageously brought them here seeking a better life. Our work at Immigrant Law Center over the last 5 years has allowed us to work with over 3,300 young people who are either applying for DACA or renewing their DACA status. And in the last year where we have data, in 2016 alone, our clients came from 13 different countries, ranging from the Ivory Coast to Canada, to Mexico, to South Korea, and more. This is an issue that the state needs to get right. The highest level of both business leaders as well as academia in a report in January of 2017 concluded that not only do we need to keep all DACA recipients in Minnesota working, but if we're going to maintain the same level of economic prosperity that we have now, we need to increase immigration to Minnesota by 4.5 times. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions as well about some of the changes brought about today. Thank you, and thank you to everybody.
Any questions?
I think with that, well, we have a question.
A question for John. John, you said this is an issue the state needs to get right, and I think maybe you were speaking about immigration more generally, but when it comes to DACA recipients, is there something state leaders can do in the months ahead that would be, in your view, the right thing to do by them?
Well, I think there's a number of things that many of our elected officials have shared today. First and foremost, what we've seen from Minnesota's Attorney General a few weeks ago is the willingness to fight and defend the executive action of DACA. We need to keep all aspects of our state government engaged on this issue. That's a good example of state leadership. One of the issues coming forward will be the issue of driver's licenses. When a person loses their DACA status is the status that underlies your authorization to drive. Can we be courageous and thoughtful and work within the existing rules to provide a way to keep driver's licenses for people who obviously have had them and utilize them for both their family and their own benefit and the state? That's another issue.
Would that be up to legislators or state officials to do? How can that?
I think we need all hands on deck. Certainly the issue of driver's licenses for the entire community is one that we fought for many years, but looking also at the Department of Public Safety and existing rules be something that we'll be digging into as the months progress.
Could you address sanctuary states? The state of Illinois just put forward sanctuary state law, so the state of Minnesota could do something similar.
I think the importance of state-based initiatives, including sanctuary, look at the underlying issues of who are immigrants that are here that need that kind of protection. Basic information that's not widely known is that a person who is undocumented in the United States today has been here an average of 15 years. They have made their lives here. In addition to the Dreamers who are front and center today, the parents who brought them here have been contributing, have been working in our workforce, and deserve protection in any way possible, including sanctuary. The reality as an agency that also works on deportation defense is what we've seen since this new administration is a 2.5 times increase in persons with no encounter with local law enforcement who are being subjected to deportation. The state of Minnesota and local municipalities, as well as county sheriffs, need to examine closely their level of participation and sharing of information that is extraneous to local law enforcement activities. That could go a long way in looking at the current intersection and what I anticipate will be increased pressure by the federal government to force local law enforcement to turn people over. You know, I know that there's a lot of additional questions and a lot of, I don't want to get away from the talking points from today and make this about something else. So I'd really encourage any questions for myself or others about the termination of DACA and where we go from here.
John, can you add one more thing about, perhaps talk just briefly about what DACA beneficiaries right now should be doing?
Yeah.
Because there are, and I think today is a day that everybody is feeling very sad and feels like DACA is dead. and then everybody who has DACA has no more benefits to come. So can you just briefly talk about that? I think it's so important that DACA recipients understand that there still is a window of some opportunity to maintain some benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I would say a number of things. Rely on reasonable, well-sourced information as you move forward, people who have DACA and trying to understand this. There's a number of publications that are already coming out. The frequently asked questions section from USCIS clears up some of the highest levels of fear. One important piece of information in there that I would underline is that the commitment to not share this information, regular DACA application, personal information, with ICE law enforcement remains. That was part of the Obama administration's commitment. Send us your information, and unless you are somebody that threatens public safety, we will not share it with ICE. So that piece of information is important. The second is take care of one another. The reality of the DACA program is that this was won and earned by activists, young dreamers themselves, and allied organizations that had it with the previous presidents, massive numbers of deportation and exerted political pressure. The level of activism by persons with DACA far exceeds their peers who were native born, a piece of information that's not well understood or well circulated. So I would say get active, take care of yourself, rely on information. The other piece is that DACA is not ending today or even on March 5th, the deadline. People who have the opportunity to renew should be doing that in the next 30 days and look for more information on our website, on USCIS's website, about some of those details. I'm sure that we'll also be conducting some community events and additional media opportunities to spread kind of next steps. The last thing I would say, I'm married to a mental health professional, is take care of your own mental health as well as friends in your circle and members of your family. This is not over. We will continue to fight and we will prevail. The other reality is that the American public supports DACA. 73% of Trump voters support a permanent solution for DACA. Only 14% of Trump voters support deportation. This is an issue where the public is far out in front of the elected officials whose job it is to fix this program. So we need to bring that level of commitment and influence to the very people whose job it is to fix this by March 5th. Thank you.
What's USCIS?
USCIS is U.S. Immigration and Citizenship Services. It's the benefit side of Homeland Security as opposed to the enforcement, the ICE side.
I think with that, we're going to wrap up. If you have more questions, some of us will be here for them. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.